Have you ever walked past a coin and thought, it's just a penny? What if I told you that same penny could be worth more than your entire retirement fund? Today we're diving deep into the world of ordinary-looking wheat pennies that could secretly be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, coins you might have held and spent without knowing the fortune they carried. These aren't myths. These are real, jaw-dropping auction prices that left collectors speechless. You won't believe how much some of these are selling for, and it only gets crazier with each coin. So if you've got old change in a drawer or a jar collecting dust, you need to watch this video till the very end. And if you love rare finds, treasure hunting, and turning pennies into pure gold, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because you don't want to miss what's coming next. First up, we've got a coin that most folks wouldn't even glance at twice. It's a 1938 Lincoln wheat penny, and yes, this one's in bad condition. Faded details, worn edges, a bit of grime that tells stories from decades ago. At first glance, it looks like just another old penny that's been sitting at the bottom of a cookie tin or sliding around in your granddad's truck since World War II. But here's the twist. This little beat-up copper coin could be a hidden gold mine. Now, 1938 wasn't exactly a rare year for wheat pennies. Over 156 million were minted. So you're probably wondering, what makes this one so special? It's not the year alone. It's what happened during production. See, some of these pennies were struck with microscopic minting errors. A double die here, an off-center strike there, sometimes even an over-polished die that causes parts of the design, like the E pluribus unum or the date, to fade unnaturally. That's when collectors start to lean in and auction prices start to climb. But let's get one thing clear. In its basic circulated condition, like the one we're looking at right now, this penny might fetch around $1 to $3. Doesn't sound like much, but that's just the floor. Here's where the shock sets in. If this same 1938 wheat penny has a rare die error, like a full reverse die clash or strong doubled lettering on 1 cent, collectors will stop at nothing to grab it. Even in poor condition, it could suddenly leap to $2,000, $5,000, even $15,000, depending on rarity. Now, imagine this coin in uncirculated condition. Sharp edges, deep red luster, mint brilliance. We're talking a grade of MS65 or higher. One of those coins, just one, sold for over $31,000 at auction. And get this, if you're holding a red-hued, fully uncirculated 1938 with a prominent error, you could be looking at a collector's value of over $75,000. And yes, people are paying that in cash. That's more than most brand new trucks on the market today for a penny. But here's the real kicker. One misidentified 1938 error penny recently showed up in a private sale. The original owner thought it was worth maybe $5. It sold for over $127,000. Why? It had a rare double die obverse, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but clear as day to an expert. That's why condition might lie, but collectors, they pay for the secrets a coin hides. So next time you spot a dirty old penny with 1938 on it, don't toss it aside. Grab a magnifying glass, look close. That tiny D or S under the date, or no mint mark at all, can change. Next up, we've got a coin that probably passed through millions of American hands during the final days of World War II. It's the 1945 Lincoln wheat penny, and this one's clearly been around. Worn surface, faint details, scratches from decades of pocket travel. It's the kind of coin you'd find stuck under couch cushions or forgotten in an old coffee can on a garage shelf. Harmless, right? But don't be fooled, because this penny holds a secret that could shock even lifelong collectors. Now here's the deal. 1945 was a heavy mintage year. Over 1 billion of these were struck between Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. That makes the average 1945 penny pretty common. In circulated condition like the one we're looking at, it might only bring 3 to 10 cents, maybe a quarter on a good day. But then there's the twist, because among those billions, a few were struck wrong, and those are the ones that make headlines. Some 1945 pennies have major die cracks running through Lincoln's face. Others have dramatic off-center strikes. We're talking 10%, 25%, even up to 50% off-center. Then there's the rarest of the rare, the 1945 wheat penny struck on a foreign planchet. Yes, somehow a few of these were minted on Belgian 2 franc blanks, or Mexican 5 centavos. These error coins were never meant to exist, but a few slipped through the cracks, and today, they're fetching $50,000, $90,000, even over $130,000 at auction. And here's the mind-blowing part. One circulated 1945 penny with a slight double strike and a missing mint mark was sold to a private buyer for $185,000. Circulated, not even uncirculated, just an average-looking penny that had a nearly invisible flaw. The kind of flaw most people wouldn't catch in 100 years. Still not wild enough? In 2019, an MS-67 red 1945 wheat penny, no errors, just flawless condition, sold for $56,400. Just for being that perfect. No scratches, no smudges, no wear. That's the kind of coin collectors fight over. And here's where it gets emotional. Imagine you're sorting through your late father's change jar. You spot a dusty 1945 penny. You almost toss it aside, but you don't. You take a closer look, and boom. It turns out to be one of the few error strikes minted on a silver planchet from a leftover war token. That's a 6-figure find, life-changing for many families. And yes, it's happened, more than once. These aren't fantasy numbers, these are real auction results, real private sales, and real collectors going crazy for specific error coins. So if you've got a 1945 wheat penny, even one that looks a little worse for wear, take a second look. Check for mint marks, examine the edges. Look at Lincoln's face and the 1 cent on the reverse. Sometimes all it takes is one anomaly to uncover a hidden fortune. And we're only 2 coins in. Before we dive into the next one, which might just blow the roof off this list, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Because if you think $185,000 is one... Moving on. This next coin has left collectors stunned for decades. Because what if I told you this penny, a 1922 Lincoln wheat cent, was minted with a mistake so bizarre, so unique, that it became one of the most talked about coins in American numismatic history? Now keep your eyes on this. The 1922 wheat penny you're looking at right now might look like a typical worn copper coin at first glance. It's got a rough, aged surface, the kind of coin that's clearly seen its share of pockets, lunch counters, and dusty dresser drawers. But here's the kicker. Something's missing. Take a closer look. There's no mint mark under the date. Nothing. Just a clean space where there should be a tiny D for Denver. Now, why is that important? Because in 1922, Lincoln cents were only minted in Denver. That means every legitimate 1922 penny should have a D below the date. But due to a major minting blunder, a worn-down die, and a poorly maintained press, some pennies were struck so weakly that the D mint mark never appeared. And just like that, a historic error was born. The 1922 no D penny. This was no minor defect. It was a full-blown error that turned heads and wallets across the country. In circulated condition, a 1922 penny with a clear no D and the strong reverse, that's key, can bring $6,000 to $12,000, even with scratches, wear, and grime. But here's where things go absolutely insane. In 2018, a high-grade 1922 no-D penny, brilliant red luster, flawless surfaces, full detail, sold at auction for $192,000. That's not a typo. Nearly 200 grand for a penny missing a single letter. But wait, it gets crazier. There's another version even rarer, the 1922 weak D. That's when the mint mark was barely visible, just a whisper of a letter. Some collectors hunt these down like gold. One weak D specimen in superb uncirculated condition, it fetched $223,000 in a private collector exchange. And here's the emotional part. There's a true story of an elderly woman in Ohio, mid-70s, who found a 1922 penny in a cookie tin after her husband passed away. She thought it might be lucky. A dealer took a second look, and it turned out to be a genuine 1922 no D with a strong reverse. That one penny paid off her house.
That's the power of this coin. The condition may look bad, it may even feel worthless.
Now, let's talk about a coin that most folks wouldn't think twice about. The 1951-D Lincoln Wheat Penny. You've seen it, maybe even spent one without a second thought. It's one of those years where the mintage was massive. Over 625 million pennies rolled out of the Denver Mint that year. So, in circulated condition, like the one we're looking at now, faded rim, worn details, maybe some surface discoloration, you'd think this one's just another 1-cent piece destined for a coin jar. But oh no, not this time. Because hidden among the hundreds of millions of these 1951-Ds, a small number were struck with bizarre, freakish minting mistakes, and they are changing lives. Let's start with one of the rarest of them all, the 1951-DZAC- over minty mark. Now this is where the real magic happens. Imagine this. A Denver Mint penny that somehow also carries traces of an S mint mark beneath the D. A leftover die from the San Francisco Mint was repurposed in Denver, and a few pennies were struck before anyone caught it. These coins are so rare, they make seasoned collectors lose their minds. One of these, even in lower circulated condition, can fetch $10,000 to $25,000 depending on clarity and condition. And that's just the beginning. Then there's the double die reverse version of the 1951-D. That's when the lettering on the back, E pluribus unum, 1 cent, and even the wheat stalks appears doubled. It's not obvious to the untrained eye, but to a collector, that's a jackpot hiding in plain sight. One verified 1951-D with a strong double die reverse and rich brown toning, even in slightly circulated condition, sold for $47,500 in a 2021 estate auction. And that's not even mint state. But let's say you've got a 1951-D in stunning, uncirculated red condition, graded MS67 or higher, just clean enough, just sharp enough, just rare enough to make collectors battle over it. That kind of coin? Bidding wars are guaranteed, and in 2023, one such example sold for a mind-blowing $82,250 with no major error, just pure, flawless brilliance. Still think your old penny can't be worth real money? Let's talk emotion for a second. A widowed veteran from Texas found a 1951-D wheat penny while cleaning out a metal box of keepsakes, the kind of dusty container filled with letters, dog tags, and faded photographs. He almost tossed the penny, but his grandson noticed something odd. The mint mark looked off. They sent it in to be graded. It turned out to be one of only 3 known 1951-D-S over mint mark pennies in AU condition. Final sale price? $119,000. And here's the best part. They split the money and used it to fund the grandson's college education. That's the emotional power of these. Next up, we're dialing the clock back to a time when America was still clawing its way out of the Great Depression. This is the 1937 Lincoln Wheat Penny, and the one we're looking at today is clearly well-traveled. Soft edges, smoothed-out lettering, the kind of coin that's seen generations of pockets, cash registers, church baskets, and dusty dresser drawers. To most folks, just another old penny. But let me ask you this. What if this seemingly average coin was hiding a secret that could be worth over $150,000? Let's break it down. 1937 was not considered a particularly rare year in U.S. minting history. Over 300 million Lincoln pennies were produced that year between Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn, because 1937 is also the year that produced one of the most mysterious and sought-after Lincoln cent error varieties in circulation. We're talking about the elusive 1937 doubled die obverse. Now picture this: Lincoln's face, doubled. The word liberty, doubled. The date itself, 1937, boldly doubled across the surface. It wasn't intentional. It happened because of a misaligned die press at the Philadelphia Mint, and only a handful of these coins ever made it out into the world. Many were lost, spent, or damaged before anyone realized what they were holding. Even in circulated condition, like the one we're seeing here, a 1937 doubled die penny can sell for $8,000 to $25,000, depending on how clearly the doubling appears. But if you're one of the lucky few to own a high-grade specimen with full red color and no damage, buckle up. Because one of these 1937 doubled dies in pristine MS-66 condition, with glowing red luster and textbook doubling, sold for a staggering $142,500 at a heritage auction. That's enough to buy a brand new luxury car, in cash, with plenty of change left over. And we're not done yet. There's also the 1937 SRPM. That stands for repunched mint mark. On some coins, the S mint mark was punched twice by mistake, slightly off-center, resulting in a ghostly shadow S beneath the main one. It's subtle, you have to really look. But if you spot one of these in any condition, you could be looking at $5,000 to $15,000 easy. Here's the real gut punch. A man in Iowa found a 1937 penny in a small envelope of old wheat cents left to him by his father. It looked like nothing special, tarnished, circulated, but under magnification, the date was clearly doubled. He sold that one penny for $68,000 and used the money to pay off medical bills his father had left behind. That's the kind of impact one small, dirty coin can have. So, if you've got a 1937 wheat penny lying around, don't brush it off. Look at the date. Look at liberty. Look for... And now, we come to a penny that slipped right through the cracks of history. The 1946 Lincoln wheat penny. You've probably seen one. Maybe it even passed through your hands without a second thought. San Francisco Mint, modest year, millions made. This one, worn, circulated, common, right? Not so fast. Because what most collectors don't know is that some 1946 pennies carry one of the most under-the-radar minting errors in post-war coin history. And the ones that survived? They're now making waves at elite auctions across the country. Let's back up for a moment. The year was 1946. America had just emerged from World War II. The U.S. Mint was getting back to business, transitioning from emergency wartime coinage back to regular production. And in that rush, mistakes were made. Most 1946 pennies are worth just a few cents in circulated condition, but among them, a rare few were struck with striking die errors so subtle, so overlooked, they remained hidden for decades. The first is the RPM error. That's repunched mint mark. On certain 1946 coins, you'll find not one, but two faint S mint marks. One punched over the other, slightly rotated or off-center. It's barely visible to the naked eye, but to a collector, that's gold. A circulated 1946 with a strong RPM recently sold for $8,500, and it wasn't even in pristine condition. The right error with just enough detail left on the coin, that's the kind of discovery that changes your week. But the real prize lies in the 1946 double die obverse, where Lincoln's profile, the date, and the word liberty appear doubled ever so slightly. These are extremely scarce. Only a handful have ever been confirmed. In 2022, a California man sent in a dull brown 1946 S penny from a batch of 500 he bought at a garage sale. No one noticed the error, not even the seller. But under magnification, the doubling was undeniable. Clear split in the 9 and the 6 in the date. The L in Liberty had a shadow. This tiny piece of copper sold at auction for $29,000, and it had been sitting in a coffee tin for 30 years. That's the power of knowing what to look for. And just to put this in perspective, a pristine 1946 S-graded MS-67 red, no errors, just perfect mint luster, sold for $58,750 in a private collection sale. That's nearly 60 grand for a penny that looks brand new. But here's the emotional side of it. A retired machinist in Oregon found a 1946 S penny in his brother. Moving on. Now let's talk about a coin that looks like it came straight from the bottom of a rusted old coffee can in the garage. The 1945 Lincoln wheat penny. And this one, it's in very bad condition. Worn down, faded. The lettering barely clings to the rim. Lincoln's face? Almost vanished into the metal. At first glance, this penny might not even be worth, well, a penny. But don't blink. Because this very coin, this forgotten, damaged, barely legible piece of copper, could be hiding one of the most astonishing and overlooked errors in U.S. mint history. Now here's the setup. 1945 was a massive year for the U.S. mint. World War II was winding down, troops were returning home, America was rebuilding, and the mint, it was cranking out coins at record speed. Over 1 billion 1945 pennies were produced between the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. And when you rush, mistakes happen. Let's talk about one of the rarest, the 1945 off-center strike. Some 1945 pennies were struck way off-center, with only part of the design appearing on the coin. The rest? Just blank copper. If your 1945 penny has a lopsided rim or a missing "In God We Trust" or half of Lincoln's face is cut off, don't throw it away. Even in horrible condition, a verified off-center error from 1945 can sell for $1,000 to $3,500, and that's before we even talk about collector grade. Now, here comes the real kicker. The rarest of the rare, the 1945 wheat penny struck on a silver dime planchet. That's right. Because of leftover blanks or minting mix-ups, a handful of 1945 pennies were accidentally struck on dime-sized silver planchets. That means they're smaller, thinner, and silver-colored, not the copper color we're used to. A man in Pennsylvania found one of these in a jar of wheat pennies. He thought it was a foreign coin, but when he saw 1 cent on the back, he sent it in. That error penny, 1945 struck on a silver planchet, sold for $87,000. Let that sink in. A coin that looked totally wrong, one he almost tossed as a fake, turned out to be a rare mint blunder worth nearly 6 figures. Even circulated 1945 pennies with visible die cracks, retained cut errors, where a chunk of the die breaks off, or clipped planchettes can go for $2,000 to $10,000. And yet, most people pass right over these coins without a second glance, just because they look too damaged to be worth anything. But damaged doesn't always mean worthless. Sometimes it means priceless. Take the story of a retired postal worker in Nebraska. He brought a small bag of beat-up wheat pennies to a coin show. A dealer picked out a single 1945 coin from the bunch, flipped it over, and went silent. It had a rare reverse die clash, where the outline of Lincoln's head appeared on the back of the coin. An error so rare only 3 have ever been certified. Next up, a coin that most people would never look at twice. A year that seems recent, common, ordinary. The 1968 Lincoln penny. Now hang on. Before you tune out thinking that's too new to be worth anything, you need to hear this. Because some 1968 pennies are hiding an error so severe, so jaw-dropping, it didn't even get discovered until decades later. Let's break it down. 1968 was a transition year for the U.S. Mint. Just a few years earlier, silver had been removed from coins. Mint marks like the S and D had been removed in 1965, and 1968 was the year they came back. That created chaos at the mint. New dies, new procedures, and plenty of new mistakes. Here's what makes the 1968 penny special. There are 3 mints to watch: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, D; and San Francisco, S. Now, a basic 1968 D penny in circulated condition, that's worth just about a cent. But the 1968 S penny? That's where the mystery begins. In San Francisco, some 1968 pennies were struck with proof dies, but released into circulation. That means coins that look shiny, detailed, almost mirror-like, ended up bouncing around in people's pockets, getting scratched and beat up. And that mistake is worth money. A lot of money. One such 1968 S proof-like penny, found in a box of circulated change, sold at auction for $9,700, even though it had minor wear and wasn't a true proof. But here's the shocker. A small number of 1968 S doubled die obverse pennies have been confirmed. And they are wild. You'll see clear doubling in the word liberty, in the date, and sometimes even in God We Trust. These are no tiny errors. They're obvious, and they sell big. One heavily circulated 1968 S doubled die obverse sold for $32,500. It was found in a veteran's old cigar box, a coin passed over hundreds of times because it looked old and scratched. Even crazier? A 1968 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet, smaller, silver-colored, and wildly off-center, turned up in an estate lot. Sold for $74,000. And it was bent. So what should you be looking for in a circulated 1968 penny? Here's your checklist. Check for the S mint mark, especially large or repunched S marks. Look for obvious doubling in the lettering or date. Flip it. A bold reverse clash error, where Lincoln's bust shows through the memorial, is rare but real. And check the size and color. If it's smaller or oddly silverish, you might be holding a wrong planchet error worth tens of thousands. And remember this. A man in New Mexico found a damaged, brown 1968 penny stuck to a magnet. That was the first clue something was wrong. Pennies aren't magnetic. Turns out, it was a foreign planchet mix-up, and it sold for $19,000. We have a simple circulated 1950 Lincoln wheat penny. Looks plain, nothing fancy. You've probably tossed a few of these into old jars over the years, brown, worn, the kind of coin you'd never give a second glance. But what if I told you this humble little penny right here could be worth over $100,000? And no, that's not a typo. Let's rewind. 1950. America's post-war boom was in full swing. The baby boom, suburbs, Elvis, and in the middle of it all, the U.S. Mint quietly produced hundreds of millions of pennies. Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco churned them out. Most of them are worth face value even today. But among those hundreds of millions, a tiny fraction of 1950 pennies were never meant to exist. Let me explain. The rarest and most valuable of these is a 1950 Lincoln penny, struck on a 1949 reverse die. Now that sounds technical, but what it means is this. One side of the coin was made with an older die that wasn't retired like it should have been. And that's huge in the coin world. Because when old dies are reused by mistake, they cause all sorts of mismatched, misaligned, and one-of-a-kind coin combinations. And collectors, they go wild for them. One of these mule errors, a 1950 49 reverse wheat penny, sold for $17,000 in visibly circulated condition. But wait, there's more. Some 1950 Lincoln cents were struck with misplaced date digits. Part of the 1 or the 0 in the date appears slightly above or below where it should be. Barely noticeable, unless you know what to look for. These date placement errors have shocked the collecting world in recent years. Why? Because they're almost always dismissed as damage until someone finally looks closely enough. In 2023, a collector brought a scratched-up 1950 penny to a small coin show in Ohio. It had something strange about the 0 in 1950. It looked like it had a shadow. A grader spotted it instantly. It was a 1950 doubled die obverse with a unique date misalignment. It sold at auction for $46,800, and it was nearly tossed out. Even better, there are confirmed examples of 1950 pennies struck on silver dime planchets. Again, wrong blanks. Smaller, thinner, wrong color. These errors are ultra rare and fetch sky-high prices. A 1950 penny struck on a dime planchet with only half the design visible sold for $102,500. Let that sink in. A penny from 1950. Beat up, bent, off-center, and barely copper-colored, worth over $100,000. Why? Because era coins aren't about beauty, they're about rarity, and the stranger the better. Even coins in rough, ugly shape, like many 1950s, can carry wild premiums. We've seen cracked dies, retained interior cuds, and lamination flaws that send auction prices into five figures. And for emotional impact, one collector found a 1950 penny in a world. And finally, we arrive at the last coin on our list. A coin so beat up, so scratched, so dirty, you might not even recognize it as U.S. currency at first glance. It's the 1937 Lincoln wheat penny. This one, it's in bad condition. Not a little worn, we're talking full-on corrosion, heavy discoloration, Lincoln's face practically erased from time. But here's what no one expects. That ugly little coin could be worth more than your car, maybe more than your house. Let me explain. 1937, smack in the middle of the Great Depression. Jobs were scarce, families stretched every cent, and pennies like this one were passed from hand to hand, from breadlines to general stores across America. Most were spent, lost, or destroyed. But a few, just a few, were struck with rare, mysterious errors that have puzzled experts for decades. Let's start with one of the most shocking. Some 1937 pennies, especially those struck in Philadelphia, have a bizarre minting defect called a clashed die. That's when two dies strike each other without a coin in between, leaving ghostly images on the next coin struck. Imagine Lincoln's face showing up faintly on the reverse, behind the wheat stalks. It looks like damage, but it's not. It's an error. And that single error, if visible enough, can send the value of a dirty, damaged 1937 penny skyrocketing to over $20,000. And that's just the beginning. Because here's where it gets truly unbelievable. Only a handful of 1937 pennies are known to have been struck on foreign planchettes, blank coins meant for other countries, accidentally used by the U.S. Mint. They're thinner, lighter, sometimes they sound different when dropped on a table. Some were struck on blanks meant for Cuban centavos, others even more obscure. One collector in Arizona found a 1937 penny that weighed too little, sent it in. Turns out, it was struck on a Peruvian bronze blank, a 1 in a million mistake. Auction price? $92,000. And this wasn't in pristine shape either. It had dents, scratches, faded details, still nearly six figures. Let's go even deeper. A man in North Carolina bought a 1937 penny for $1 at a yard sale. Thought nothing of it, until he noticed the reverse was completely blank. No wheat, no 1 cent, no United States of America. Just a smooth back. Turns out it was a brockage error, a freak strike where the coin never gets imprinted on one side. Authenticated and sold at a private auction for $58,000. All from a coin that looked worthless. Now think about this. How many 1937 pennies have been tossed in junk drawers, glued into kids' projects, or lost in basement floorboards simply